Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Welcome to the New World Order Showcase podcast. Today we're speaking with Holly McNeill. By the age of 34, the perfect world that Holly had built to hide her perceived flaws and defects imploded. From that low point, she promised to do better and spent the next 20 years making good on that vow. Her research took her across the country and from coast to coast. She read books, listened to live teachings, attended retreats, and took in whatever spiritual instruction she could find. For 6 years, Holly practiced Buddhism, in part living in a Dharma house in San Francisco. Her quest would evolve into the creation of P.E.R.L.O.V.E formula. That's P.E.R.L.O.V.E. An effective transformational set of mindfulness and meditative practices based on the teachings and gurus she encountered. Please help me welcome Holly to the show. Welcome, Holly. It's so nice to have you on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, I made it all the way out to Southern California. I'm originally from South Dakota, moved east to Minneapolis, east to the greater New York City area, west to San Francisco, and now I'm in Orange County. So I'm the creator of P.E.R.L.O.V.E, a set of mindfulness and meditation practices that help you to go from the small and isolated all the way to the infinite, if that's what you want. I spent 20 years after making a vow at a super low point in my life to do better. And I spent 20 years making good on that vow. I read books, listened to teachings, went to retreats, practiced Buddhism for 5 years before at age 49, packing up everything I had, leaving everyone I knew to move across the country to San Francisco to live in a Dharma house. And
so
20 years
like
after,
living it. I'm sorry.
And 20 years after I made that vow, these practices just kind of showed up, and I'm just trying to share them with whoever can learn from them as I did.
So what's a Dharma house like?
It's interesting. So there's no TV, there's no community space. It's very quiet, a lot of very contemplative and but also real people. Some of the people were nuns, monks and nuns lived there. Some were lay people like me. And you just share this bond, being kind of in the Buddhist kind of mindset, kind of more 24/7. I was working as an architect there in a large architectural firm. So I'd go to work every day, but I'd come back, we have pujas and group dinners and meditations. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's more like communal living by yourself?
Yeah, kind of. I lived in what used to be the living room of this house. So my room was like 32 feet long by 14 feet wide. And someone else was living in the dining room space that they converted to a bedroom. But we had a little bit of community space. And there was another house next, there was two houses that had more community space. But we also had the temple where we spent time in the Mission District, where we spent time. A lot more community happened there. So yeah, it was more just like a place of refuge and support. It was wonderful. It was, yeah, very blessed to have had that opportunity. I was in the greater New York City area, and my job opportunity came to go to San Francisco. I knew no one. And they said, we have a house there, because I was practicing on the East Coast. We have a house there. And if you're interested, you can stay there until you get on your feet. I said, absolutely. So I went there and I said, do you mind if I just, stay longer? And they say, stay as long as you want. And it was a wonderful time because like I said, I'm an architect. I did large hospital projects and they needed to renovate their temple. It's very small, one room temple. And it was like I could do that with my eyes closed, but they just needed someone. This is how life works when you put an intention out there. They just needed someone. And I showed up, I drove all the way across from the East Coast and I helped them renovate that temple. And they were so grateful. And I was so grateful because you have to do 5 hours of volunteer work a month. And I didn't have to clean the bathrooms anymore because I helped the renovation. But it was the best project I ever did. Very heart opening.
It's fun to do stuff when it's just aligned with who you are fundamentally.
Yeah. Yes, it was amazing. Yeah. Great time.
So what led you to actually putting out your shingle and being a coach?
Well, like I said, I hit this super low point, very lost, I created the perfect life to cover up my flaws. I had house, husband, career, kids, everything you could ever want, except for my happiness. And so I made this vow at this lowest point of what was actually very self-absorbed, anxiety-filled, unhappy life. Help me and I'll do better. Life, Buddha, God, the universe. Give me another chance and I'll do better. So I was given the second chance. And like I said, with my karmic debt in tow, I went out to make good on that vow. And I had no idea what I was looking for. But about 10 years into it, I started to see kind of things started to come together. And during the COVID, and so 10 years in, I realized I wanted to start sharing what I had learned. But so I put 2 intentions out to the world. The first was to retire from architecture before I turned 50. And the second was to have the time and space to write. So as intentions go, I retired 4 days from architecture before I turned 50. In 2017, I sat down to write. But it wouldn't be until the COVID pandemic when I printed out a book proposal that I would look over at the pages and I could see it, a path. It was like the lights came on. It was just there. And my husband helped me come up with the acronym of P.E.R.L.O.V.E. And as they continue, I've been teaching those and a platform came up online, we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, that I could teach people would come to the classes, and it's evolving, right? And I've learned, actually, it's continuing to evolve. And I'm learning the first 3 practices, pledge, evaluate, recognize, are kind of the missing link between all the teachings we have about, being whole and being complete and, and love and compassion and expansion of consciousness, power. These 3 simple practices help you to get to that door, right? They're just very straightforward. And if you do them consistently, they work because there's neuroscience behind them, there's psychology behind them. And I'm fortunate enough to have the rest of my life to try to show people and share with them what took me 20 years to figure out. And that's just my goal. So, yeah.
So who's your ideal client, would you say?
Well, anyone who I'm doing it for people that may be as stuck as I was, lost, unsure, mostly women so far, age 30 to 50 or 60, actually 35 to 65, and just who are struggling and lost and maybe don't know where to go and want to find their personal power and freedom, want to do more, but have their own, what I call their thoughts, emotions, and feelings holding them back. So anyone looking to find that personal freedom, to get to explore who they truly are, their true nature. Yeah. Anyone struggling with depression, anxiety.
Very cool. Very cool. And you offer programs?
Yep. I have there. If you go to my website, PRELOVEFormula.com, and you sign up for my monthly newsletter, where we highlight a practice every month, you'll be sent a link to a 1-hour class, a free class that goes through each of the practices. And I suggest to everyone, like, if you don't learn anything else from me, it's that you must do something over and over and over and over and over again if you want it to sink in. So I offer that for free. We have a perfect practice forum that meets twice a month, goes through the practices in depth. There's 4 modules, so it's kind of a year-long piece. It's very inexpensive, but it's been a great group, and that's helped to create even, more content for this, because it is pretty new, about 1.5 years. And then I do personal coaching as well.
Is the personal coaching just one-on-one, or is it?
Yeah, it's one-on-one. Yeah. So the group, the forum, right, we meet at the beginning of the month as a bigger group, and at the end of the month we do smaller groups, so people have a chance to talk and ask questions, and that's been really great. I've also just finished the Hollywood Fringe Festival. I put on a live show with my niece called The Lost Formula to Happiness, talking about these practices. So, and things are expanding. I'm really early on in my journey. As we talked before we started recording, you all of a sudden realize you have to be an entrepreneur and get this out there. And things are really evolving in a wonderful way. And I just have so much trust, because when I started on this journey and I made that vow and I kept that intention, even though I didn't know what I was looking for, things started showing up one after the other. So I just have a complete trust in life, and you have to really have that, because that's really where you'll find your true nature and your strength and your power.
It is interesting how when you just put it out there, that things will show up. And to be able to just take the next step, even if you're not sure that there's really going to be solid ground beneath you.
Absolutely.
It just always ends up being there. Like you reach out your hand to the universe and it'll reach back.
It absolutely does, because we're more than this body and mind, right? We're more than our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And when we can create the space between ourselves and those negative patterns and defaults, which is what I teach in those 3 practices, you'll see that energy is always out there. So if you put something out there and you watch for something to show up, it will show up. Things may have been showing up, but you haven't been paying attention, right? There's always that pull of your higher universal self trying to show you what you need to set yourself free. So,
and often when we get caught in our thoughts and emotions, we sometimes close ourselves off,
right,
to being able to see what's out there.
That's exactly right, Jill. You are absolutely right. They talk about levels of consciousness, and at lower levels of consciousness, you are so stuck in it, which is where I was at age 34. I had no idea. I couldn't see anything beyond what my own struggles. You absolutely cannot see it. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, if we're not familiar with something, if we don't have experience with it, we literally can't take it in. So these practices are about becoming familiar with new practices that allows you to create that space for those aha moments to come through, even those moments of peace and wisdom. And it's not the real highs of being happy all the time. It's not the lows of being depressed all the time. It's about the middle way, being centered. But there's absolutely a very clear path, and that's my message.
I've listened to a lot of Dr. Dispenza's information out there and done a lot of his meditation practices, and his idea of putting yourself into the future that you want to experience so that you become familiar with that is so powerful.
It is,
because it allows your mind to have like the idea that this is what it would look like if it were. Once you get there, you'll know you're there because this is what it's going to look like and feel like. So your mind is so powerful. It just propels you to be in that situation.
So powerful. Our power of imagination is highly, highly underutilized. We don't believe that what we imagine becomes real, but it absolutely does. And nothing that ever exists man-made wasn't first imagined. So he's absolutely right. And that's obviously he's very popular these days and has a lot of good information. But yeah, I use his teachings a lot in these practices to get you from stuck to a place where you can really explore, right? You can explore your humanity. You can explore why you're here. You can explore your potential. Yeah, he's good.
He has a lot of science behind what he does too, which
Yes.
is really powerful when you're
Yes. Yeah.
talking to people that doubt.
Yep. He was one of the, yeah, he was one of the key people in creating these practices that helped to kind of key it all together. Because like I said, there's a lot of teachings on the more elusive stuff, but he was one of the key people that that helped me to kind of to really tighten these practices up. And like you said, he's got so much science behind it. And the 3 practices of pledge, evaluate, recognize, I can quote, reasons why this is. And it's not just, kind of spiritual or this or that. It's actually how the mind works. And we are in charge of the mind. And so if we start paying attention and take charge of the mind, the world's our oyster. The world is literally our oyster. Yeah.
I've seen it work so many times.
Yay.
And you get into the more esoteric aspects of it. Like I had an intention group for a while. I don't know if you're familiar with Linda Taggart or not, but she does these Power of 8 intention groups. And I had hit my thumb with a pneumatic nail.
Oh.
And it went down, it hit the bone, and it was so painful. I went to the group and I had been complaining like all day because my thumb hurt so bad. And they held an intention for me. And at the end of the 20 minutes of intention, the pain was completely gone. Yeah. I could move my thumb. It was as if it never happened. And amazing. When I tell you it hit the bone, it hit the bone. It hurt so bad.
Right. The power we have to heal. Yeah. To even heal. We don't believe we can heal ourselves. Right. And I mean, if you look at Dr. Joe Dispenza's story, how he got started, he was in this horrible accident and he was a chiropractor and his whole spine was just crushed. And in his mind, he recreated it. So yeah, absolutely. We have so much power. Our thoughts, emotions, and feelings, when we have 6,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 80% of which are negative and 95% repeat. So when we get stuck, it's easy to see how we can get stuck in that, right? And even at the beginning, when you want to make a change, you don't even have to be able to see how to get out of it because probably you can't, right? You just have to make that effort, that pledge to grow your awareness. Yeah, it's possible.
And in the beginning, it is just being aware. Oh, I'm having this thought. Do I have to react to this thought? No.
Right. You just said all 3 of my practices. It's pledge awareness, evaluate your targets for change, and then recognize them as they come up in your daily life. It's that safe. It's literally as you think, so shall you be. That is such a strong statement.
It is totally a strong statement. So how do you actually, I know you do one-on-one and you go through each of your little pieces. You want to talk about the other 4, the love?
Sure. Well, love is, I tell people, like I said, I just finished the show in Hollywood, and at the very end, my niece goes, "Oh, crap, we don't have time for love." And I say, even though the practices are designed that you can move from one to the other, back and forth, however you'd like, her is really the most difficult part. In love, we sit back, relax, and explore what remains when the TEF is removed, the negative thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And so L is there's a clearing that appears when you stop engaging with all this negative thoughts, thank it for what it taught you and send it on its way. And so in L, we locate that clearing. Okay. And with it as an object of meditation, we then drop from our head to our hearts, because that's where it said our true nature is. We then open to the omnipresent but subtle flow of energy that comes from an open heart. And then we vest in what we find there, which means to take ownership of it, right? To spend time in the infinite wisdom, universal compassion, and unconditional love there. But vest also means to take responsibility for the obstacles that show up in your life, because here's where your intention manifests. Because although your isolated small self is using all your negative thoughts, emotions, and feelings to imprison you, your universal, all-pervasive self is showing you in every person, place, or thing, every negative thing that happens in your life, every positive thing that happens in your life, what you need to set yourself free. So taking, vesting in the obstacles. And then the last E is expanding beyond your conditioned limits. In the end, we find that happiness and power is much more subtle than we expected when there's a slight shift in perspective. And we realize that we and the world around us are one and the same. We realize our role in creating our own happiness in our worlds and the happiness of others. They say when you stop seeking, you have arrived. So that's the end. That's the end of the formula. But I go from I can be down at V and E and I'm going all the way back up, because we're human, right? This is a human experience, and we do think thoughts, and things do happen to us. So the more we become familiar with what's going on, and these practices are just one, right? I like to think they're very straightforward and doable, but in general, it's always it's like you said, there's the science behind it. This is how it works, right? And we have the power to make the change.
And I think getting coaching, it's one thing to talk about all.
I can't hear you. Sorry. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Stuff always happens.
Yes, technical difficulty. Yeah, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Often we can intellectually say, okay, I can do all these steps.
Yep.
But in practice, we almost always need somebody to come alongside us and say, here,
right,
this is what you're doing. And you may think you're doing it exactly the right way, right, but have you thought about this? Just to shift them over, just to
that's right.
A smidgen.
And that's what the forum is really about. We go pledge. 1 month is pledge, evaluate, recognize, pledge, evaluate, recognize. We have different series, but always the same kind of thing, because the mind will actually throw up roadblocks when you go to change, because it's seeking out ways. It's just a biocomputer, right? So it's seeking out ways to keep its programming going, right? Mm-hmm. And so at first you're going to meet with resistance. And so of course that kind of extra support, a timer or something, if you can do it on your own, great. But yeah, that's what the forum's like, any kind of meditation class, just reminding you to go back to it over and over and over. It takes 3 times to remember something, 8 times for it to sink in, and 21 days to make a habit. So yeah. And I've met a lot of amazing, wonderful people out there in this world, like you, Jill, who are trying to, give people these tools, but it's really a personal choice, and it's a personal belief and trust. You have to give a little bit of trust in yourself that you can do this, or start to grow that trust if you don't have it, or, like some compassion. If you acting in ways contrary to your patterns aids in loosening them up. Right. And so if you're really stuck, just start with a little compassion or understanding, affirmations. That's where I started. Affirmations on the treadmill. I am worthy. I am lovable. Right. If you're really stuck and really lost, I would start there. But then when you start to see these little glimmers coming through, you can grow that awareness and change. You can change your world. So. And
it really is. It's so simple.
It's so simple, yeah.
But our minds like to make things so complicated.
Right, because it's protecting the programming. If anxiety is mine, low self-worth is mine, and like trying to do a show in Hollywood, are you kidding me? That brings all of that stuff up, and I could cower to it, or I could see it from a distance for what it is. And once you can do that, there's no center to any of that. There's no powerful beast there. If you unravel it, there's no bandit there, right? So, but you're right. We do make it very complicated, because we spent, however, 20, 30, 40 years growing this, as Dr. Joe says, neuronet of long-term relationships of negative impact. And so until we start to break those up, you're going to meet with that resistance. So yeah, the message is, just start and don't give up, and you will find the way. It's how our brains work. Yeah. And
we're all working to create the world
that
we're going to live in. And it's so interesting. It's the main reason why I do this podcast, is because I like seeing what's out there, who's creating the world that I'm going to be living in. And I want to be a participant in it, because I believe that, all of our thoughts, our imaginations are creating the future for us, just as the thoughts and behaviors of the people that came before us created the situation that we're in now. Right. And I just have so much hope. And it's so exciting, because there's never been a time like there is now, where people are just stepping into their power. They're sharing what they're doing and discovering. And really, I feel like the world is being recreated in a way that's just going to be spectacular.
That's awesome. And the more people think that way, right, the more it will happen, the collective consciousness, right? And so that's great. I commend you for what you're doing. And like I said, I've met a lot of wonderful people that are working to show people that they absolutely have the power to create, the future and the now and everything. So, and
it just takes one person, because that one person, it ripples out.
Yeah.
And it ripples out to their, their family, and then their community, and then the communities ripple into each other. And it just, eventually there's a shift, and it's a whole new world.
Yeah. I talk about it like an ocean liner, right? And individually, right? If you're heading in a negative direction, it takes, you have to turn it, and it turns slowly, but same collectively, right? If we can turn the dial. And so, that's again, too, why I am doing it. I came from a very, very scary, lonely, angry, anxious, self-absorbed place, and it was horrible. And it took me a long time to get out of it. And I wanted to share this kind of shortcut, if you will, for people as much as I can. So
that's fabulous.
So we're in this together.
Yes, we are. It's great to have partners. So what's the one thing you want our audience to take away from this conversation today?
Yeah, and I've mentioned this already, but if there's one thing that you learn, that someone can learn, is that if you want to learn something, if you want to make a change, you want to make it a habit, you want to become familiar with something, you must read it, listen to it, practice it over and over and over and over again. Because if you think about it, we've had these negative patterns and defaults that, by the time you're 40, can be over 1 billion negative thoughts that we've practiced over and over and over. So doing an affirmation for 2 minutes isn't going to do it, or trying meditation for 30 seconds isn't going to do it. But the practices and pledge starts with 6 minutes a day. 1 minute, 6 times a day, you just watch your mind, right? And eventually you make a habit of that. So if there's anything you want to do, you absolutely can do it, but you must do it over and over and over. That's my biggest message.
And how can people get a hold of you?
P.E.R.L.O.V.E.formula.com. If they have any questions, you can email me directly at holly@P.E.R.L.O.V.E.formula.com. And there's a contact there, but send me an email, sign up for one of our forums. If you sign up for the newsletter, you get the link and you already get the practices, and just even listen to those practices over and over and over again. So
that is wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Jill, for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.